Good morning, everybody. Miss Ventry's here with our Roald Dahl BFG Read Aloud. So we've got just 2 chapters left. And there's a little mix-up on the chapter numbers, so don't get confused. This is actually chapter 23, and it's titled Feeding Time. I think I actually combined chapters 21 and 22 the last read aloud. So it looks like there's no chapter 22, but we read it. It was titled Capture. We read it along with chapter 1. All right, so we didn't skip anything. So here's chapter 23, Feeding Time. While the giants were being captured, a tremendous bustle and hustle was going on back home in England. Every earth digger and mechanical contrivance, that's like a fancy machine, in the country had been mobilized to dig the colossal hole in which the 9 giants were to be permanently imprisoned. 10,000 men and 10,000 machines worked ceaselessly through the night under powerful arc lights, and the massive task was completed only just in time. The hole itself was about twice the size of a football field and 500 feet deep. The walls were perpendicular, and engineers had calculated that there was no way a giant could escape once he was put in. Even if all 9 giants were to stand on each other's shoulders, the topmost giant would still be some 50 feet from the top of the hole. So there was no way they could get out. The 9 giant-carrying helicopters hovered over the massive pit. The giants, one by one, were lowered to the floor, but they were still trussed up, and now came the tricky business of releasing them from their bonds. So remember, they were all tied up, being carried under those helicopters. Nobody wanted to go down and do this, because the moment a giant was freed, he would be sure to turn on the wretched person who had freed him and gobble him up. As usual, the BFG had the answer. "I has told you before," he said, "giants is never eating giants. So I is going down, and I shall untie them myself before you can say Rack Jobinson." With thousands of fascinated spectators, including the Queen, peering down into the pit, the BFG was lowered on a rope. One by one, he released the giants. They stood up, stretched their stiffened limbs, and started leaping about in a fury. Here's a great sketch of all the curious spectators, it looks like, as the manhugger, or I don't know which giant this is. Oh, probably the flesh lump eater, being lowered into that hole. You see? Why is they putting us down here in this grub sludging hole? They shouted at the BFG. "Because you was guzzling human beings," the BFG answered. "I is always warning you not to do it, and you was never taking the titchiest bit of notice." In that case, the flesh lump eater bellowed, "I think we is guzzling you instead." The BFG grabbed the dangling rope and was hoisted out of the pit just in time. The great bulging sack he had brought back with him from giant country lay at the top of the pit. "What's in there?" the Queen asked. The BFG put an arm into the sack and pulled out a gigantic black and white striped object the size of a man. What do you think it is? "Snozcumbers!" he cried. "This is the repulsant Snozcumber, Magister, and that is all we is going to give these disgustive giants from now on." "May I taste it?" the Queen asked. "Don't, Magister, don't," cried the BFG. "It is tasting of trog filth and pig squibble." With that, he tossed the Snozcumber down to the giants below. "There's your supper," he shouted. "Have a munch on that." He fished out more Snozcumbers from the sack and threw them down. The giants below howled and cursed. The BFG laughed. "It serves them right. Left and center," he said. "What will we feed them on when the Snozcumbers are all used up?" the Queen asked him. "Oh, they is never being used up, Magister," the BFG answered, smiling. "I is always bringing in this sack a whole bungle of Snozcumber plants, which I is giving, with your permission, to the royal gardener to put in the soil. Then we is having an everlasting supply of this repulsant food to feed these thirst-bloody giants on. What a clever fellow you are, the queen said. You are not very well educated, but you are really nobody's fool. I can see that. And check out this sketch of the clever BFG. Smart, huh? All right, let's see. That's a shorter chapter, guys, but that's because I read you two the last time. So we have one chapter left. I will read to you tomorrow, and it's all about the author, and it kind of gives the whole meaning of the entire book, kind of comes together finally, and we think a lot about the theme. All right, so think about how the BFG really has changed from the beginning of the story until now, and go ahead and check out your assignment on your Google Classroom. And don't be confused if the chapters don't perfectly match up. It'll be 22 or 23, but it is the chapter titled Feeding Time. All right, you guys, have a great day, and I will see y'all soon.